Welcome to the podcast. Today, my guest is Kayla Knuckles. She's a hypnotherapist and past life regression therapist. She's also a claircognizant oracle reader and palmist. So, welcome to the podcast, Kayla.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
So, you're there in Midwest Indiana, isn't it?
I'm actually in Northwestern Indiana, near Pierceton, Indiana, kind of a real rural area of Midwest Indiana.
Great. So, you do sessions in person, but as you say, small town. So, and you also offer sessions online. And one of the interesting things is you're also the co founder of what you call the Magic Bus, which is a mobile metaphysical shop. So, actually get on the road and go out to the people.
Yeah, that's correct. We launched our business so that I can reach more people and help more people in the ways that I feel like I'm here and put here to do, because this is really something that I'm passionate about.
I think it's such a great idea, but I love the proactive approach and the creative approach. When you're in person, online, or on the Magic Bus, you're offering services like regression sessions. You're also doing oracle readings, and you've also got products like crystals. So we'll get into that in detail soon. But for a start, what are the main modalities that you're using?
Would be my oracle reading, my palmistry, which are my main focus right now. My newest modality would be my hypnotherapy program, and then continuing with my past life regression, which is something that I feel and what I've been called is a lead to reach more people and help them further through the oracle, because a lot of my oracle sessions will lead to more. Like it's not that this is like my customers' first experience with it, is what I'm noticing. Is a lot of people are coming to me like, this is my first time ever figuring anything out spiritually. I've never done anything like this. And then once they do the oracle or the palmistry, they're super intrigued and interested and want to learn more. And this hypnotherapy program and my past life regression integration into my services will just help my clientele base a lot more to heal their emotional trauma, or with their work with their relationships or their career, and just help them grow spiritually.
What are the main kind of issues that people come to you with these days? So,
Yeah, I think some of it's self-development, like they just want to learn about it. And some of it is trauma. Like, I'm going through a breakup. I want to leave my career. I'm not happy, but I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so lost. Like, help me. I'm calling on something higher than myself because I don't know the answer and I just need some guidance. So guidance, self-development, and just wanting to heal wounds and figure out where they are. Because sometimes they start with a chakra point. Like, where's the pain? Like, is it in your head? Is it in your throat? Is it in your heart? Like, are you having trouble talking, communicating? Like, where are we going to start? And so they don't know this question, or they don't know the answer to that question. So Oracle is a reference point to say, okay, I can tell it's your throat chakra. Like, you're part of the reason you're struggling in your marriage or at work is because you have trouble communicating, because you're blocked. Like, we need to figure out how to heal that. And here are some things that you can do. And so we'll cover that. And then we'll also go into some of the past, like through Oracle, sometimes I can get visuals of trauma that you went through, whether it's death or whether it's, a breakup that changed your life. And so it all just depends on the person.
I'm sort of curious in two ways, like how you discovered spirituality in the first place. So was it something that you felt like you were born with? And then how do you balance stuff like, and so tell us about the work with a law firm as well.
Yeah, you know what? I have to say it started with fear because when I
Okay.
was a little girl, I had a lot of spiritual encounters, and a lot of it was through I could hear them. And by that, I mean I could hear them walking around my house. I can hear them moving objects. I would also see like blobs, like I would see like shadowy blobs, and I would always get really freaked out about it. It wasn't until I was probably 20, I was in my 20s, probably 22, 23, actually right before I met my husband. It all kind of stopped. Like, I stopped getting like the encounters, and I was curious about why that would happen. But it was because I wasn't afraid anymore, because I had built myself up to I had a spiritual relationship now, so I was protected. So they didn't come to me to freak me out. And also because I was listening to what they were trying to give information to me, I was hearing them now. And so I would get the messages and I would work with them to deliver them, because that's all spirit. If you're stuck in that realm, they just want a message to come across. And so a lot of it started from fear. And actually, when I was in my 20s, I was actually on, if anyone listening knows what the Dead Files is, it's a show, and I don't even know what it airs on, but it's called Dead Files. And I was on that show talking about a spiritual being that wasn't crossed over and how it was kind of antagonizing me. And this wasn't a one-off occurrence. There were several people even on that show that was experiencing similar things. But like I said, once I tuned into it, once I started to realize that I'm just a message deliverer, and I would just get the message and I would pass it along, they stopped bugging me. So now I don't have to be afraid, because I know if I tune into the message, I can just get it out, because that's all they want, and say what I need to say. And so I don't have, like, don't get me wrong, like, I'll still hear weird things or have weird sensations or think something's watching me, but I know I have a spiritual door that I can close whenever I don't want to deal with it. So it started with that. And then it led to astrology and my interest in the signs and the stars, and always be attracted to the moon and just like nature. And I just knew that I was special kind of in that way. And then also because I'm very empathic, and I think people come to me with their problems. And that's another thing that I have too. People are comfortable opening up to me. And that is a huge thing, because I have this sort of energetic way that, like, it's not necessarily soothing, but maybe I can say things also that might tend to be harsh, but it's a realization that people need to hear in a way that's helping them. And so people can connect with me in that way and tell me things about themselves that they may
Okay.
not want to tell even their own spouse or something.
I'm just curious. So you talk about it started with fear and connecting with them as black blobs, that kind of thing. So looking back, knowing what you know now, how would you define them? And are there variations within it? And so when you say it started with fear, to what extent was some of that fear justified, and maybe I should be a bit afraid of it? And to what extent was it I need to have proper boundaries, in which case I don't need to be afraid of it? Or maybe I was afraid of it and it was actually quite a light thing anyway. I just misinterpreted it. So what kind of breakdown was there in those kind of possibilities?
Yeah, I think it was just the way I was raised to think that, any soul is demonic, and, it's sort of like a religious thing. I was raised Christian. And so even though a lot of that still resonates in my soul, I kind of found my own path, and really take things from certain religions that resonate with me, and I let other things go. So I feel like that's what spiritualism is. It's a connection with all different types of religion: Buddhism, Hinduism, Catholic, all these different things. So I them, when you say what, can you define them? I'm just saying souls that are kind of, they haven't crossed completely over, that are here, that might be evoking fear on you, but they just have to go to the light, and you have to help them find the light. And
Yeah.
they're stuck in that veil. They're stuck in a veil. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no bad spirits, but the chance of a haunting is like very rare, I've learned. It's like never happens. I mean, it has, I've never experienced it per se, but most of the time it's just a soul, an innocent soul, or a soul that just hasn't found the light and stuck in the veil, and that they could be a loved one. A lot of times it is a loved one. And so that's what I mean when I say them.
Like, what was it that helped you move from fear to understanding?
Knowledge. That's what happened me. Reading books and understanding what spiritualism and earthbound spirits and poltergeist and all these different terms are. Matt Frazier, psychic medium, Gregory Keene, a spiritual advisor that I actually took workshops with, and practiced mediumship of my own, and how you connect with dead ones or loved ones or whoever's on the other side. And so those are two people that helped me understand what it is. There's a book, Matt Frazier, Psychic Medium, We Never Die. That's the title of the book. And in that book, it will tell you, like, it will talk about what happens when we cross over. And a lot of what he says just really resonates with my soul. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying a lot of it really hits home for me. And in my own experience, it makes a lot of sense in my mind. Like it does resonate with me, and recognizing signs and messages our loved ones send us from heaven. And just, that's a lot of how my journey started too, is the number 1111. I just one day just noticed I've seen this number literally everywhere. And why am I seeing this number? Which I land myself on YouTube. Like, what does this mean? And then I'm reading books. Like I said, one thing leading to another. You're guided. You're
Yeah.
always guided. And if you listen, you'll find your way.
Yeah, so it sounded like there were some phases for you. It sounds like you're almost kind of born into it. You are like, let's say 10 years old. You had perceptions, kind of a gift and ability to see things, but then a bit of fear around it or misunderstanding. You're 10. Why would you
Right.
know anyway? And then you mentioned like up until 20, it's any of the, it started to recede just even and you met your husband, and so there's another phase, and then you're going into the working world, that kind of thing. But it sounds like 4 years ago in 2020 thing it came back again. So is that accurate? Did you have a period where you're still always
Yeah.
interested in modalities, palmistry, etc., but 4 years ago it sort of like kicked into another gear and another level? Is that right?
Well, let me just say that security. So I was at a point in my life before I met my husband where security was a priority for me, like surviving, right? Like fight or flight. And so in that phase, like I couldn't focus on my spirituality until I got to a point of I'm stable, I'm secure. And that's what my husband really provided, that emotional support and financial support. And once I, realized that this is not just a boyfriend, this is somebody that I want to spend my life with, I was able to let go of that fight or flight mentality. And then my doors opened up wide. Like then it's like, okay, now we got you. Your team knows when you are ready. Your life will matter because the traumas and experiences you have leading up, the more of a traumatic life you have, the bigger your purpose is going to be. And so I understand now like why I grew up the way that I did, and how my life happened the way that it did and all the things, because it really set me up to be hard. Like one of my spirit guides is a rock, like I have this like solid thing inside of me that's just like fighting, and like I'm not going to give up easy, and I'm determined. I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter.
Yeah.
So meeting my husband really turned off that fight or flight mentality and gave me that stability that my soul needed. So again, there's reasons people are in your life, and it when you meet somebody that's like, I have a connection with this person, whether it's a friend or a stranger on the street that you stop and talk to for 30 minutes and you have no idea why you just did that, but you're taking something away from that encounter that's positive, that hits your soul. And that's why like I have goosebumps right now even saying that, because it's so powerful, and every single person listening to this will know what I'm saying, hands down. Because when you meet somebody that's connected to your soul journey and it's right, your doors open up.
That's great, and that's just such a good way of how the spiritual healer's path works, which is no one finishes college or gets out of school and becomes a past life therapist. You know, there's at least the 20s at least. You have to at least do 10 years to have all those life experiences, security, dealing with the childhood that you just had, and preparing yourself and gaining knowledge and experience, and walking through the fire yourself, probably having some sort of a healing crisis, which can be dealing with the traumas that we may have suppressed or just had and not been able to process. So there's so much of that is necessary before people can even think about becoming a spiritual healer in that way. So it's interesting that you had that time. So over the last 4 years or so, it sounds like you've ramped up your own personal integration of life and everything, and by going to a bunch of sessions yourself. And so I know even a year ago you went to for the first time you had a one-off past life regression therapy session with a healer in your state. And so what other and you mentioned some other books you've read and healers you went to that help bring knowledge. But can you give us maybe a bit of a sequence of the modalities you're exposed to and other teachers, books, or sessions that you had that really lit the fuse for you?
Yeah, so interesting fact. I shouldn't say never. I had my palm professionally read one time in my life, and it was just last summer. So I've read palms. I've never had mine professionally read until recently because there's just not a lot of palmists around here, for one. But that's just a fun fact about palm and my palm reading. As far as oracle, tarot, those sorts of things, I've always been intrigued by that. And I remember getting a card reading back when I was just a teenager, just a young teenager, maybe 15 years old, at a little county fair or just like a little town fair. And then I have continued to get readings just periodically throughout my life because I too need guidance. Like I try to read for myself sometimes, and it just doesn't. It's not the same. You need to go to somebody to really experience it because you can't lead it and experience it at the same time. And so I do continue to do that. And also, as far as regression, I personally did a past life regression session, I think about a year and a half, 2 years ago, uh, because I was very interested. Again, you talk about this calling, you don't understand where it's coming from. Um, Kayla, go get a past life session. Like you need to do that. And so real quick about that experience, very interesting actually. I was right in Fort Wayne, Indiana. There's a Letha Blaze Tick, who's a registered, or I guess a certified hypnotherapist, past life regression therapist that I found. And I went in and I had never done anything like this before. And so come out of it. And the gal that hypnotized me says, I've been doing this for like 40 plus years, and I've only had one other person go into past life and actually visit a parallel life, and she had taken like 4 or 5 sessions. You're the only other person that was able to go right into a parallel life. Had no idea what that even meant. And so I looked into it a little bit, and basically it just means that it's your life currently happening in another dimension. So our soul can be in many places at once. And so my higher self, or my other part of my soul, is somewhere else experiencing something else that it's hard to explain, but that's basically the concept, is that you can be having multiple lives in multiple dimensions. And what I visited was a motherboard. It was a spaceship. And when I came in as a ball of light, and I was hovering around two, it was an extraterrestrial being, and then there was a light being who I would say came from the city of Atlantis. He was a cute man, blonde hair, really long, beautiful, kind of, he radiated light. And he comes on the ship, and I'm going to a meeting, and that's what I know. I was going to be invited to this meeting on the motherboard ship with this ET named Misa. And he was a triangle head alien, which again, I don't know a whole lot about ETs, but figured out later that triangle head is a very rare species of ETs. And the triangle head alien had a light in between his eyeballs that was sort of like a third eye. So I could see him, and I could see, I just remember their features. They pull out a scroll, and on the scroll, there was a concern of planet Earth and the fertility rates on planet Earth. And I am a subject of fertility issue myself. And if my husband and I were to have a baby, it would be a very rare. It's almost probably not going to happen. I have like a 3% chance, and at my age, like it's just not going to be possible, based on what my fertility doctors have told me. So for me to be on this motherboard ship in another life, being able to access something that, and at the time, I didn't even know that I was having fertility issues at the time. But I'm on the ship, and they're talking about this ET and this being are talking about, do we intervene? Like, how can we intervene to help planet Earth? Because they're kind of in a crisis. Well, needless to say, like a year later, I'm looking at the local newspaper, and there's literally hospitals shutting down because they can't keep doctors busy enough in the clinic, or like where they're delivering babies. Like there's just not enough babies being born right now to keep hospitals open in certain rural areas. So like these women that are pregnant are having to travel out of town to go have their baby delivered, because the birth rate, if you look at the statistics, I mean, they're declined. Like our fertility, it's a problem. So I thought that to be very, very fascinating. And just coming out of that experience being like, what just happened, you know? And so that was incredible to experience. And so that's my personal experience with it. So obviously I am, you know, a true believer of like how this can really change your outlook on life. I mean, it can change you. And so ever since then, you know, I've just been fascinated in following that and the fertility issues that we're having on planet Earth at this time, and that the ETs are aware of it. And, you know, it's something that I think society and humanity really needs to take a look at, because in the next 20 to 30 years, we could really be faced with a major crisis here of the human race. I mean, it's just, I mean, check the statistics. It's getting scary. And so that's my personal experience with the past life regression. I also did some things on my own. After, you know, I can easily go into that sort of headspace. I can easily lose my consciousness. And I know that's not easy for everybody, but for me, I can easily listen to a YouTube video and I can, you know, follow the prompts and guides, and I can visualize everything in my head. And I woke up under a hypnosis session I did on myself through a guide on YouTube shortly after that experience, actually. And I got freaked out. I actually had to get myself out of it. You know, I know we have a critical protective barrier, but what I was seeing was a little bit difficult. So I actually woke up in a cave. And all I could see was I could look down at my body and I could see myself as old. I was wrinkly. I was old. I had super long fingernails, and I could see that my hair was so long that I could see it around my waist. It was real like stringy gray. And I was in a cave and there were writings on the walls, and I was stirring a potion. And I look over and I'm inside this cave, like there's bars on the cave, but I knew that I wasn't afraid of what was outside of the cave. I was afraid. I was in there because I was afraid of what was outside of the cave. I wasn't locked in there by anyone. I was scared to go exit from the cave because I would be harmed. So I was actually hiding. I was in hiding. And I did a little bit of research on that and what the symbols were on the walls of the cave, and come to find out there was a specific location out of the United States. I want to say, you know, this is back in like the 1900s. There was a specific cave. I have this information wrote down somewhere, but you know, point being is that I felt like a witch that was being targeted in that era of time, and you know how witches were treated back then. So I was just, you know, in another lifetime, I could have been some type of a targeted witch, or who knows.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So a lot of the things you're talking about there, like it's revealing that there's a natural spiritual talent that you're born with. It goes to the background a little bit when you have to deal with worldly issues, worldly being boyfriends, husbands. But of course, there's a worldly element to that. But there's also a spiritual soulmate element to it as well. And then being drawn back into it as a more predominant interest, and then it becoming a profession. And so the kind of training that I offer people is either to people who have a therapeutic background as a psychologist, who are, you know, have years and years of, you know, that's their profession. But I also train people like yourself who have this, and a lot of people can go to past life regression and be able to access past lives, but maybe not quite have the karmic connection to it, which means they then go on and become a past life regression therapist themselves. But that's what you've done. And so what I'm looking for is the kind of people with that kind of talent and connection and courage to be able to, and discipline to be able to work hard and develop those skills and courageously go out and offer them. But it is something with that ability that you've got. But then just having a spiritual talent isn't enough. We do then study and get some of the therapeutic tools as well. So what I find is the people who've got a lot of, you know, really good therapeutic tools, they may be playing catch up or need to develop the spiritual side a little bit. And the people who've really got the spiritual thing dialed in can catch up to the therapeutic skills. So either way, both are actually great backgrounds and can end up doing well. And so that's something you've done. So we're talking a lot about past lives and entities and EBs and earthbound spirits and extraterrestrials. But you know, we're still, you've still got a good clinical hypnotherapy background. And so the kind of issues you work on is if people come in and start saying triangle headed ETs, am I going crazy? You've probably never heard of this. And you go, well, actually, I can, because people will say that, like you're never going to believe this, but, and so you've gone through a lot of that personal experience and you can resonate with it. Whereas someone who's like a clinical psychologist might go, well, actually, I never have heard of it. Or even I've been doing this for 40 years and I've, never really seen it. But that, that really helps you connect with clients. And so then a key thing can be there, with all of that. And we're actually going to come back and have another podcast where we talk about your past life regressions that you give to people and something getting more into EBs and ETs. But today, we want to start off sequentially and really look at hypnotherapy. And so one interesting thing about hypnotherapy is the kind of issues we deal with. And you might think, well, I was kind of interested in the spiritual stuff about the ETs and everything, and why do we have to go into the therapeutic, not as spiritual kind of things as hypnotherapy? But what we find is, for me, that's a bit of a false division or distinction. And so, what's your take, or what made you even think? Because as the Past Life Awakening Institute, the training and the approach that we have is that we don't just do past life regression. We do between lives and spirit releasement kind of stuff afterwards, but we tend to do hypnotherapy and regression to this life before. So what made you think, I want to know how to do hypnotherapy and regression to this life as well as past life regression and not just exclude the hypnotherapy?
So I want to start by saying I like that you brought this up because I do want to start with the fact that I found you on Spotify. And so I love the fact that here we are, full circle. You and I are doing a podcast together. And so I just loved that your approach and how you train and your program, because your program is very purposeful in the way that it leads you from one thing to the other. So truth be told, I didn't even know I wanted to do hypnotherapy, but the power of knowing it and being able to understand the clinical purpose of being hypnotized and what it does to you is hands down so important, has to be done before you can approach past life therapy, because you can't just go into a past life therapy program and say, oh, I want to learn past life therapy, how to, which is what I thought I was going to want to do at the beginning until, you helped me understand that no, there's a process. Like we need to kind of go into hypnotherapy because there's a little bit of prerequisite, and it's so important for people to understand that, because it's not that you can't have one modality without the other. I can go in the next 10 years and just do away with hypnotherapy altogether if I choose and just focus on past life. But I know it, and it's a part of a foundation. It's like laying the concrete, it's so yeah, it wasn't really a choice of like, I want to, it was, I have to do that. It's just a part of the program. And a lot of training and schooling that you go to, there's always a prerequisite. You can't just go into geometry without having a math background and prerequisites to math. You understand what I'm saying? So that's sort of how I knew I needed to have hypnotherapy is, again, I have to understand what it is clinically before I can go and send somebody into a past life.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we're doing spiritual regression therapy. And who's to say where the regression goes to? It can go back 10 years or 200 years. The root cause can be in either one. How are we to decide that it has to only be in a past life and not in this life? And also, who are we to say that the past life is spiritual and this life isn't? Also doesn't make sense. There's some very spiritual stuff that happens in hypnotherapy, and oftentimes a hypnotherapy session can be a bit more spiritual if we were to quantify them, which we probably shouldn't, but just for that purpose we could, can be a bit more spiritual than some past life regression sessions. So you yourself as a student received a program of 3 hypnotherapy sessions from a fellow therapist. And so can you tell us a bit about, your experience with that and how eye-opening or interesting it was?
Yeah, first of all, anyone interested in session, Eddie is an amazing therapist and I would highly recommend him. So I just want to give that shout out. Yeah. But with that being said, I went under hypnotherapy with him and it was powerful. It was sort of I told my husband the other day that I was doing just like licensed therapy work here and there, with a licensed therapist just for different reasons. And I got more out of my 3 sessions with Eddie than I did out of months of like licensed therapy work just for random things, right? So, because the reason being is that it's you, like you do the work, you know yourself better than anyone truly does. And even though consciously you can't figure that out sometimes, when you go into hypnosis, you will understand it. It will make sense. It's hard to explain. I don't even know if I can explain it to you, but when I went under, I was able to actually regress to some key moments of my life in this lifetime where it was the cause of my issues. And so I could go back and look at them and be like, this moment was the reason why I was feeling this way. And let's talk about that. Let's just try to rework that, And so, I was presented with the option to either rewrite that scene or I could review it so that what would happen would stay the same, but how I would feel about it would be different. And so I chose to rewrite. I chose to just make what happened completely different. And so that I can look back on it, and what happens never changes. Obviously, the memory is always going to stay the same and it's still there, but I was able to rewrite it. And so I can have a different reference point to look back on so it doesn't affect me in my current life anymore. And it was so powerful, in fact, that I found myself days after session actually taking my wedding band and putting it on the opposite finger. And I'm like, why did I do that? And Eddie is such a good therapist. He helped me realize that, is it possible that your subconscious mind is married to 2 different memories now, and that, you're only going to keep the one that's more powerful, and the other ones that truly happened that affected you in a negative way, you can just, you kind of divorce that memory. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true. And so that was powerful because, I've been married close to 5 years now, and I've never put my wedding band on the wrong finger, like ever. And then not even to realize it like hours later in the day. So it was a total subconscious move. Yeah, I mean, that is incredible.
Yeah, brilliant. So shout out to Eddie Kays. So Eddie was on the podcast recently, so you can go back and see a few episodes ago. Eddie was there. And if you go to my the website, my Past Life Awakening Institute website, I've got a graduates page, and you can see Kayla is there, and Eddie just happens to be right next to her. So if you're looking for sessions from Kayla, you can find her there, and from Eddie as well. You can see them both on the graduates page. So shout out to Eddie. And so that's great, isn't it? So 3 sessions of hypnotherapy had a powerful effect. And so, as a student of it, you go through and experience it, and then you're offering hypnotherapy sessions to clients yourself. You're offering sessions to spiritually inclined people who are into crystals and palmistry and come to you for that kind of stuff. But then there are other people who aren't particularly spiritual, can access indeed very spiritual things in their own. Because I think one of the initial things that you even talked about was, I'm not really into the subconscious whatever, but I'm a smoker. So I mean, hypnotherapy is about smoking, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that conception that, hypnotherapy is, oh, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to do hypnotherapy. I'm going to quit smoking. And so I'll have an intake form for my potential clients to fill out, which they'll have an opportunity to tell me what their issues are. And that's where they can say, I want to quit smoking. But then in the initial interview, we can kind of dive in and say, okay, but yeah, smoking is what you might believe is your issue, but what's the core to that issue? Like, where did that begin? And so with this particular client, we went into that, and just in the very initial stage of the interview, it was easy to kind of say, okay, yeah, quit smoking, but there are some deeper issues here that you want to work on. And so just looking at the fact of where did it begin and what emotions arose to want you to start smoking, right? So you have to kind of look at the big picture. I wish we could say, I know my issue, right? I know the reason I want to be skinny, or I want to lose weight and I can't, is because I drink too much pop or I eat too much food. Okay, well, that might be true, but why are you eating too much food? Are you having issues in your marriage or at your work? So same thing with smoking, right? And so once I started to get into this, I realized quickly that we were able to tap into, and with him, he allowed himself to get emotional. And that is what hypnotherapy is about, is taking those deep rooted emotions inside of you and just letting them out. And so for a grown man with no spiritual background, with really not even being able to connect with a spirit guide and not being able to visualize staircases and blah, 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 he tapped into some deep emotions that led him to feel pain in his current life. And like in pain, I mean like feeling that emotion again so that you can work on it and understand where it came from, so that you can regress back to that point in life where it was a trigger. And now we can understand it because you as a wise adult who you are can look back and say, I can see that differently now. Like I know that whoever caused the pain or why I was feeling the pain wasn't necessarily something that I did, but it was just an understanding of what you know now you didn't know then. And so you can just completely look at it in a different way. And he has, been able to see it that I'm stronger, I'm better, I'm a good person now, and be able to feel it so that it can come out, so you don't have to hold it in anymore. You can let it go.
Anytime we're working with people, there's a presenting issue and a real issue. And so smokers come in and their presenting issue is, I've got an addiction to nicotine. But the real issue is often more complex. By now, most people who want to stop smoking have, if it's a simple habit. And so what we find with smokers these days, it's more about the fire burning inside them than the cigarette that's burning in their finger outside of them. And so what we find, and you mentioned he was able to go in and access some real authentic emotions. But I will say, credit to you, he didn't just do that out of nowhere. There's a 3-session process we do, and it's almost really four steps, because we have an extensive intake process where we get an intake form, people write up as much as they can, but then we really interview them. And so by doing that, you developed a lot of insight and create a lot of rapport with him. Because if you just tried to come in and say, okay, you want to stop smoking, lie down on the couch, breathe in, breathe out, it's kind of a guided meditation, there is no emotional breakthrough happening, like at all. And so what you're able to do was go through a process that created knowledge in him. Because people have, I asked that question, those entities, you had a fear. Was that a legitimate fear that you should have had? Or was it a fear that I didn't understand and I didn't need to be? And I'd misinterpreted it. And so for a lot of people, we are holding back these burning things inside of us and not dealing with them because we don't have the resource to be able to deal with fire burning in our hands. But if a therapist or a hypnotherapist there with us, they can help us do that. And in order for them to even want to touch those burning hot coals and be able to cool them down and put them into the past, then you need to do a lot of preliminary work, which you did in an intake call, an initial interview, and in a first session. And so it wasn't just, and then he just opened up like a flower straight away, was it? It was like you did, hours worth of work getting him to a point where he could then access some root cause issues. And they were, decades ago, with very powerful and influential scenes from his life that weren't related directly to the habit of smoking and when you had your first cigarette and what peer pressure, none of that. It was really about very powerful emotional causative events in his life, and you're able to go through and look at those, and so that was something that then transcended and went far beyond the presenting issue of nicotine, and went into really working with some deep issues that, and again, where that the subconscious allowed to bring up, and his inner wisdom. So we talked before about I can channel knowledge that I give to people and that kind of thing, but at this point we're able to he's able to channel his higher self, his inner wisdom, his wise adult, as you mentioned, and able to have those insights create a peace and a healing within him. So, can you tell us even a bit more about, the process that you went through and the hours that it took to be able to get to that kind of real healing resolution?
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched base on how long it takes to really get somebody even in to access those emotions. But even in the hours that you spend with that person in front of you in your presence, there is even additional hours. There's background work that goes into this that I do on the side, which is like understanding truly. I am not able to put together every piece of the puzzle during session. I am focused on you and making sure that I'm reading and suggesting the correct things to you, and there's a kind of, throwing balls at me, as you might say, and trying to catch them all. So once I leave session, I go home or on a different day and I sit down with the material and my notes and I say, oh, I understand this differently now than I would have in session. And so I can reflect back on that. So that way, when we go into a new session, we can recap and make sure that I'm fully understanding and you fully understand what happened. And that way, if it comes up in the future as a success point, or I can, take that material and use it in future suggestions during hypnotherapy, then that's what we'll do. But I have to have a full understanding of your scenes and your regressions of where you're going to make sure that I fully know it like it's a story of my own, because I have to be engaged with it totally in order to be able to help you comfortable enough to expose everything. Um, so there's a lot more behind the scenes work than just going to session and spending 3 hours before you access emotions. There's a lot of additional work too, and gathering material and gathering notes and making bullet points and understanding it to its full capacity.
That's a great point. And like to be able to do it at the advanced level you're doing it is, I mean, part of the process that is, one of the reasons I know about the session is because you're giving the sessions, but then you're actually writing it up as an assignment. So you're reviewing. And so this is something to anyone who's doing, taking on another modality or doing hypnotherapy and past life regression. To me, there's the phrase, the unexamined life isn't worth living. And the unexamined session of hypnotherapy is a great missed opportunity. If you just do a session and don't really think or contemplate it, you've missed a lot. If you can, what I used to do is I'd do a session and then the person would go, I'd take some notes and think of some ideas, but then I would just go and do a self-hypnosis session for myself where I'd regress myself to a couple of hours ago when I was doing the session and go through the session again, thinking woulda, coulda, shoulda, what would I do to be better? And then I'd write up notes and pretend that I was like writing case studies and, trying to write, a Brian Weiss type book based on all of the clients that would come in. And then you so I now set assignments where I have people write up in great detail, pretty much everything that happens in the session. And then we go through it line by line and I mentor people through it. That's like, wow, that was great. Here's some opportunities that you can do here and there. So, look out for this in the next session and squeeze some more juice out of this and that. And so that's something that means that, by the end of it, and just to be a bit specific, there are some things where you can find that, you can do it on a face value direct way of regressing people to their first cigarettes and the influences about nicotine. But oftentimes there are other emotions, like if people recall times that loved ones died, they may then have some sort of sense of guilt towards their involvement in it. There can be all sorts of traumatic events that leave impressions. So smoking, in a sense, then becomes like, it's hard for me to take that seriously as a primary thing for me to heal because it pales in comparison to all this other stuff. And you need to deal with some of that headline stuff before you can put out some of those fires that enables them to then turn around and extinguish cigarettes. And so, by doing that, it becomes a lot of emotional and spiritual breakthroughs are required along the way. And the funny thing as well is a lot of times when people are assessing right at the beginning, when you're having an initial call in an interview, part of what I do is people often have an intake form or look at a person and think, oh, this person's not suitable for past life regression. Well, this person won't even be hypnotizable, or smoking's, something from 10 years ago. And, I don't really want to work with that. But what you can help do is identify that you'd be surprised how applicable some of these modalities can be, and just even just knowing that let's persist with this see what happens. And then at the end of it, there was no guarantee that would get this result. We were thinking along the way, do we even proceed with this person as a basis for the assignments? Are they going to be responsive? If we get into a second session, are they just going to blank out, open their eyes and look at us and say, well, I guess hypnosis doesn't really work anyway. I kind of thought that it wasn't going to, and it was kind of BS. But in the end, we get, the exact opposite outcome. And so a lot of people without some sort of training, mentorship, or insight would have not had the hunch to work with that person and would have just missed out purely on the opportunity to work with them in the first place, or would have given it a shot but not having the resources to be able to get all of that, really powerful breakthrough out of them. So it's a big credit to you, and a big thing that is significant for hypnotherapists to be able to assess and know. And it's not something that's particularly easy. It comes with a bit of experience, and through the mentoring, you sort of get that experience in advance. So is that something that you remember? No, when we're thinking like, should we work with this person at all? Are they even appropriate? Is this going to be?
Yeah, I like a challenge, I guess you could say. And that's why I wanted to work with them, because I wanted to, and if I felt like I was failing, or if it did in some fashion or what have you, at least I learned from the experience. And that's what I wanted ultimately, was just to learn and have a difficult person per se that I may have had reservations about, but there was, again, this inkling inside of me that was just like, you really should work with this person.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did.
Yeah. And that, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? We were discussing, you had three people, and two of them were like quite spiritually in tune. And we think, oh, this is going to be good. And then a third one, I don't even know if we should work with this person at all. I don't know if it's for them. It might not click. Our sessions might not work. But by the time we got to the end of it, we were like, this person we thought about not doing it with turns out to be my favorite. Turns out to be the most improved, the most interesting, that I learned the most, had the most powerful breakthroughs, all of that stuff. So it's one of those things. So I think people can often be a little bit quick to discount people who can be very good clients and issues that can create very powerful sessions. So some people really want to cherry pick. I only work with super spiritual people only on super spiritual issues, but there's a real judgment in there, and it's often erroneous. Everybody's very spiritual if you can access it. It's just not that easy to do it. But if you've really got the skills, then you'll find a lot of spirituality in a lot of people that you may not see initially, and a lot of issues that you may not see initially as well. So great credit to you on bringing out a lot of that spiritual and emotional element. And then how does Oracle particularly work in the way that you do it?
Oracle, when I explain it to a person that doesn't understand it, I would say it's a channeled message from your higher self. You bring this to me. I am just relaying a message, but I need your consent. So with your permission, we can call upon your spirit team. And by that, I mean your archangels, your guardian angels, your higher self, passed away loved ones can come through sometimes. I use cards as a reference point, but a lot of times I'm just intuitively picking up messages. Sometimes it's through sensations in my body. Sometimes it's through clear voyant ability, which is I can just close my eyes, hold your hands for a moment, and I can actually pick up images like cars or objects or icons or things that are significant to my person that I'm reading for. For instance, I had a gal do a Zoom reading with me a while back, and I was given a piece of silk cloth. And when I asked my sitter, what does this mean? She says, oh, well, my dad who passed away was an Elvis impersonator, and he used to cut silk up at the end of a show. And if he liked his audience, he would give everyone a piece of that silk cloth. And so that was very powerful for me and her. And it actually built a little bit of confidence in her to know that I wasn't, making this up. This was something that was very unique and special to that person. And then other times, it's just the most random things. I just know this. I'll just say, oh, well, why am I seeing a Christmas tree and you're traveling in a car on Christmas and you're with your family, and why is that important to you? And a lot of times my person knows what it means. I never really know what it means. And that's why this can be so hard for people, because they want to question it. And so what I've learned is you just can't question it, because everything you say won't resonate. because of timelines. Timelines, we work on past, present, and future. So a lot of times what I can be seeing can be something in another lifetime. And this is another reason why past life regression is so important and why I want to incorporate that modality, because I am picking up a lot of things that don't resonate in my oracle. I know that this is probably connected to a future life or a past life. And so for that reason, it's important for me to incorporate that modality. And then I tell them that every person is different. I don't really like to put a time frame on my readings, although I do usually go with 30 minutes and charge them a flat rate for that. But a lot of times it goes over that because I don't just cut the reading off, because if it gets emotional or if things come up or if they have questions, a lot of time it can run over. And so with those things being said, there could be some questions and follow up, but a lot of times that's the concept of what it is. I'm reading your energy and I need the help of your spirit team and your spirit guides to be present with me to do that. And so that is the concept of oracle readings.
When we're talking about channeled messages and then connecting that to past life regression or hypnosis, we're creating a trance state and eliciting stuff from them. So how do you think about the relationship between the kind of oracle work that you do and then how regression therapy hypnosis works?
I think they're close, but it's different because with oracle, your conscious mind is in control, and I'm more doing the work. Yes, without you, I would have no work to do because you're bringing me your spirit team that I can connect with and give you a message, right? So it's a little bit more spiritual on I'm accessing this information from somewhere else, right? But with the hypnotherapy, you're accessing your own divine information and your own soul's information, and you are connecting with your own self in that way. And it not that it's not spiritual, because it is, but there is a little bit of differences here, how you gather the information, because with hypnotherapy, you're really reaching into your soul to bring out what you know about yourself. Where with oracle, sometimes it can be your loved ones helping you from the other side, providing you with guidance.
So palmistry, can you tell us a little bit about how that works for you?
Yeah. So when people ask me about palmistry, I say everyone's hands are a book to their life. And so when you're born, you have a set of lines on your hands. And I typically don't like to read for people until they've reached an adult stage of life, because you don't have as much experience, because that's how the lines form on your hand, from experience. You can see health in your hands, you can see career lines, you can see life lines, love lines, you have allergy lines, you have marriage lines, children lines. But the way that the palm is broken up, and to understand it, is by mounts. And so you have all these different mounts in your hand, and your fingers represent planets, and planets have energy. So based on the length of your fingers, the size of your fingers, the separation of your fingers. For instance, if you hold your hand up and you have a lot of gaps in between your fingers versus if they're tight and they're closed and there's no gaps in between the fingers, would mean if you're a closed off person or if you're an outspoken person. And so you can tell so much from somebody's hands. There's elements of fire, water, earth, and air. So with those, you get into astrology, and palmistry is connected to astrology in so many ways, because with astrology, you talk about planets and you talk about elements and the energy of them. So with fire, you might have a temper, or you might, be very stubborn, or, you can be a challenging person. And so, with air or water, for instance, you could be very emotional and sensitive. And there's certain signs that represent that. It's a session. People learn a lot from it, and it's more like get to know yourself a little bit better and understand your triggers. Because if you can see that, I'm looking at your career line and I see a break, because there's different things that can happen on every line. And if there's a break or an island or different things that can appear, I can explain, like, this could be a hurdle at this age or this point in life, or you might be experiencing something based on what you're doing right now. Things can change. You can take a different way. But based on what it looks like, looking at your career line, when you turn 40 or 50, you might, have a career change. And I can match that with other lines and relationships and different things. And so there is a lot about palmistry. I have been studying palmistry for probably 15 years. And I had just got the confidence to actually start doing palmistry professionally only a couple of years ago. So again, books, YouTube videos, other people that are learning it. I follow people on my Instagram channels, just, intrigued by what they all mean. And this is something I'm very passionate about too. There is so much to learn. It never stops. So another thing too about palmistry that's really cool is that you have a left hand and a right hand. What hand do you write with? Well, that's your dominant hand. That's the hand I want to look at. That's my guide and that's my reference point. But your non-dominant hand, that's the hand you were born with. That's your sort of path that was laid out for you, but you have free will. So your lines are going to change just based on that, because you can make decisions. You can be with who you want to be with or have the relationships that you want. And so that will just make a change and impact the lines. And so each hand will actually have different lines, which is kind of cool. But that's just because I refer to that as kind of like your current life and your future life.
Yeah, great. And it's interesting that there are passions in some sort of spiritual area, and then eventually you find your way to spiritual hypnosis-based regression. And so this is pretty typical for a lot of people. It's actually really helpful to have some sort of background and interest in a lot of things. And so this is something that typically by the time people come to it, it's also really useful in that you've done all that research and then you work with people for a couple of years offering things professionally. So you really get the sense of what it's like to be a professional working with people. And then you add other modalities as well. So this is an interesting background. I think a lot of people can relate. And also particularly to crystals. That's something I'm curious about. So that's something on your website, thewitches.com. Links in the description. You've got it's a substantial part of your website is like crystals and some of those other products. So tell us about what crystals mean to you, how you got involved with them, and how you use them.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of just flows. It's an ebb and flow thing. So spirit or my higher self, there's a calling to the crystals, and the energy called me to them. And so with my business, just everything going on, I just inevitably found myself like having this infatuation with crystals. And I had no idea what crystals were. If you would have asked me 7 years ago, like, what is a black tourmaline? What is a lapis lazuli? I would be like, I don't know what color they are. I have no idea what they are. But now I know hundreds of crystals and their properties, and I studied them and I teach people what they are, and I can help others learn about them, and they can use them in ways where they can manifest, or they can use them when they journal, or they can use them for their dreams, or they can use them at work to be able to speak and be confident in what they're saying. So, for instance, today, I actually put on a lot of my crystals just because when I work with people, that's important to me to have my crystals around me. I don't wear my crystals every single day, but when I feel like I need that extra push or that extra motivation, I'll put the intention on my crystal to say, hey, today, like, I'm going to do something meaningful. I'm going to do something powerful, like work with me, like help me, carry me. And so, and a lot of times I will say, like, I'm confident in that when I get stuck with something, or if I'm not resonating with one of my clients, like, I know that my crystals they'll be there to help me, to guide me. And so some of my favorite crystals are black tourmaline, which I have wearing here on my necklace. And then I also love bumblebee jasper. Bumblebee jasper is a solar and sacral chakra stone. So it's connected to your energy portals within your body, which is really cool as well. And that's a whole nother arena, the chakra system. But with that being said, that's just something that evokes creativity. Like your sacral and your solar plexus chakras are a lot to do with creativity and how you are as a character. And so a lot of the reason I have been connected to this stone is that it helps distract you, so that you're not getting stuck in your emotions or thoughts. Like, it helps you to maintain your focus. And also it brings a lot of willpower and motivation into your life. And this stone is a yellow color. I don't have a stone in front of me to show you, but this stone is also really cool because the only place you can find this stone is in an active volcano. So the miners actually have to go inside of an active volcano to gather it. And it's made of hematite gypsum and sulfur. And so it's just a really cool stone, and it adds a lot of zest to your life. And then with my black tourmaline, it's just a protection stone. So I feel as a person that's diving really deep into the spiritual realm in many ways, I have to have some sort of protection. And so I use this whenever I'm reading for somebody. I always have my black tourmaline present. I'll also wear rings with jewelry, natural gemstones and things, because it just adds to me. It's a part of me. And so whenever people come and they ask me like, well, where do I start? Like, how do I pick a crystal? I have no idea. And you know what? What I tell them is let the crystal pick you, because I went into a store one time and I had no idea what I wanted. And I picked this green aventurine because I ended up looking into it later, and it's like my heart chakra like was needing some healing. And so I just subconsciously picked this stone, looked it up later, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is what I need. Your energy will pick it. Like, you don't even have to think about it. Allow your subconscious mind to pick it for you, because you will pick the right one, I promise. And it can be because it's the color, or it can be reasons that you don't need to explain or know. Just let your energy do it. So I tell them to stand in front of my crystal collection and just like be drawn. Like, first pick where you're going. Are you going right or left or center? Let your body go, and then just pick the stone, and that's the stone you need. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, yep. They look at the property card and they're like, yep, that's exactly what I need.
Great. Yeah. So crystals are an interesting thing. For me, it's something I've never really got into myself. And I've often wondered about the connection, though, because the very first hypnotherapy training that I went to in past life regression almost 20 years ago, we were learning about all our regression stuff. And then we would go. And then my teacher, Dr. Sunny Satin, his wife came in and set up a big crystal stand in the corner. I'm like, what have crystals got to do with hypnotherapy and regression? And I was sort of puzzled over it a little bit, had a look at them, didn't connect, but it was just like, well, why is that happening? And then 10 years later, I met my partner, who happened to have a metaphysical store of her own. And I walk in, a whole array of crystals as well. And so, and
Wow.
she's now my partner. So little did I know that my teacher had a partner who was deep into crystals. I turn out to be a teacher and have a partner who's deep into crystals as well. I still know next to nothing about them, but I did observe that for whatever reason or not, there is a connection between crystals and these kind of regression modalities. So I'm sure there are a lot of other people who are connecting on it. And I just make that up. And for anyone who isn't, I'll just make that observation that whether you are or not, for some reason, I've just noticed that connection. And so these are things that you then, so your magic bus, let's get to that. And so you've got services that you do and products that you have. So crystals are part of the products that you take with me as in your metaphysical shop, but you also have a room or space in that magic bus for sessions, is it? And by magic bus, we're talking about like physically an actual big bus that you've modified and created space for. So tell us a bit about it, just describe exactly what a magic bus is and how that works.
Sure. It's actually an old school bus. So it's just a school bus from the 90s. And we converted it and made it into a mobile metaphysical shop. And that was just our dream. And the back of the bus, so we divided it into 2 sections. So the front of the bus is for retail, and then the back of the bus is for session. So it's a little bit private back there. And I call it my oracle room. And I am not an artist by any means, but I did paint an alien in a spaceship on the wall that my people sit in. So that way, when I'm looking at them, reading for them, it looks like an alien's abducting them from a spaceship. And that was just a kind of a funny thing I did in the back. But it's just a very small room. It's probably only I mean, think about a school bus. How wide is a school bus? And then maybe 5 feet deep. So it's just enough. I have a little booth in there with a table, and I do my oracles there, my palm reading. And so it's a little magical space. People always tell me when they come on my bus, they feel the energy, because I'm always burning sage. I'm always burning incense or different. I want them to experience the sensations of like connecting with spirit. And so because the energy is always high, um, it feels good just to walk on it. Like it's like I say, I'm more than a shop. I'm an experience. People are drawn to my bus. They find themselves just like they just want to see it. They just want to get on it. And that's spirit. That is so spirit leading you to me. So I always say to people like, you're here for a purpose. I don't believe in coincidences. Like it's no surprise that you found me. Let's get into it. But I always also say, if it's not the right time, you aren't going to come onto my bus because, again, you might be turned away by the energy. Let's match frequencies. Okay. So there's a frequency match here that's happening, which is powerful. So I love it. It's amazing. I've had so many great experiences so far. I can't wait for the future to see where this goes.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I love about it myself is that there's this idea that people are drawn to you, and they certainly are. People can be drawn to you to have sessions online. They can be drawn to you to come to your place, and they can be drawn to come to your bus, but you've put yourself out there in order for them to be drawn to you. And so people aren't just going to be drawn to you if you're just sitting in your room going, I hope someone comes and asks for sessions. So what I really respect and think is a great model is that you're thinking of creative ways of what can I do to get out there so that people who would be drawn to me have the ability to even be able to find me in the first place. And so there are some things where, it's one thing to learn modalities and to be able to practice things like hypnotherapy and past life regression, but it's like, what do I do to get clients to be available so that people can be drawn to me? And there are a lot of things you can do. You can approach healing centers in your area. If there aren't ones in your area, you can go and be a visiting consultant. I would go and live for a month in a different city and work in a resort and offer sessions there. And people sometimes say, I'd love to do this kind of work, but I live in a small town or I live in a big town, but no one likes this stuff, or everyone is Christian and they think this is, some sort of spiritual thing that's not for them, that kind of thing. And so, you're actively going out there and allowing yourself for people to connect. And so what is it that made it your dream? And how did you get this great idea to put yourself out there and be able to offer it in that way? And was there even some negative, like, it is actually pretty difficult. I'm in a small town. How am I even going to make this happen as as a business? Doesn't make much sense. I'm just not even going to bother. But you were drawn passionately to it and decided you're just going to think of a lot of ways to make things work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an example. I truly am because I do live in a very, very small town and this is a church community. And so I have to fight kind of for my place here. And it's challenging. It's so challenging.
Yeah.
And that's why I have to go out and find people because I have to gain that confidence with my clientele base to let them know that I'm here. I'm somebody that you can go to that's an alternative to, licensed therapy. Like Oracle Innocence as well is therapy. And knowing about yourself and learning about yourself is therapy. Like knowing who you are is the most important thing in this life. And so being confident with you and owning who you are and being in your skin and being happy and confident and love yourself. Okay. So, how I kind of got the spark would be honestly to want to leave like the 9 to 5 job and seeing myself as an old lady. And I feel like I need to say that. Like when I see myself as an old lady, I want to be motivating people. I want to be a coach. I want to be a spiritual advisor. I want to be somebody that's like, I started young and I'm not, I don't even care about the money per se. Like, yeah, that's a bonus and I hope to achieve that one day. But I truly just want to reach as many people and help shed light on what spiritualism is and how these modalities can truly change and affect your life. And so that you can be happy in your career and your relationships and with yourself. And so I would say another part of it is that I just felt called to do it. Like I don't really know how to answer that question because one thing led to another and I took some chances and, it's a huge risk to start your own business. And actually still have to work a job on the side to maintain finances and be able to pay my bills. Like I wish I could say like my business is self-sustaining and this is all I do, but that's not the truth. You know, I still run and manage a law firm. And I do that 3 days a week, and I'm passionate about that too. I know my people there love me, and I do good work. And you know, I will eventually get to the point where I'll either leave that on good note, or I might continue to do that for 20 years. I don't have a real plan with that. I just want to stay in my mood right here and continue doing my spiritual because it makes me feel good. And I do feel like I have an impact on other people's lives. I truly do. And I think I've opened a lot of doors in a lot of different uh, ideas for people. And so let's say about 3 years ago is when this really started to take off. And I had like a plan, like, let me buy the bus, let me start the business. And so before that, leading up to this, I did a lot of spiritual work of my own in 2019 and 2020, going to different places to learn about spirituality and taking workshops and doing different things. Given my background and how I'm getting to this point in my career, I just, you know, I would really like to just share some encouraging words to other women that might be thinking about starting their own business, or that might just need a little extra motivation or encouragement. I would just like you to know that just think of this as a planet where you only exist, that there is no competition, right? And then just don't give other people's judgment your energy. And also, if you hear the word no, it just means next. So don't, you know, settle for no. No just means next. And also really trust your intuition, because you deserve a place in the market. But never stop learning, because learning is how you grow. So get comfortable being uncomfortable, and also be humble, and also encourage other women, which is what I want to do for you. And so follow your dreams. And that's just some encouraging words that I want to provide other women that might be thinking or considering getting into any spiritual modality, or just changing careers, or leaving their husband, or anything that might be on your heart.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, one last question I often ask people is, what are the principles of healing, or what has healing work taught you? That's actually something you said to me, I think, in our first meeting. And so there's a little quote. And so I asked you about it. Can you share us? And that's something that just popped into your consciousness, and I really liked it. So it hit. So
Yeah.
what was that quote that you had?
Yes. This quote, again, me having a connection with spirit, sometimes, especially when I'm journaling or when I'm writing, I'll just get weird quotes and sentences that pop into my mind. And with this one, I was typing one day and I just finished the whole sentence. I never backspaced once. I never I read it through after I wrote it, and I was like, this is the definition of healing that spirit sent through me. And so it says, healing is when spirit touches a spot within you that is so deep, emotion has nowhere to hide, and it explodes from you with purpose. And that's how Kayla Knuckles will define healing.
Beautiful. I love it. I love that there's an artistic quality to it. So, we can talk about hypnotherapy and, the therapeutic and technical tools, and we can sound a bit scientific. I think ultimately there's a great artistry. And to me, hypnotherapy and past life regression, spiritual healing is an art. And I love that. And there's a lot of metaphor and poetry involved. I love that poetic description. So thanks for sharing that, and a great note to end on. So yeah, and I look forward to getting into some of the past life regression spiritual stuff. But for now, it's great to hear the spirituality that's embedded in everything that you do. So yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.